Hey folks, Dr. Rowe here. Hope you're well. I wanted to just share with you, I was in the post office yesterday and I came out. And as you come out the post office, there's kind of a rack of newspapers. I don't read tabloids, etc. It's just not something I've done for a long time. But as I came out, I looked straight in front of me and there was the Daily Mail there with this image in it. It asked the question, have we as a nation lost all sense of proportion? So let me put it on the screen for you to have a look. You can make your own judgment call on this. If I read it out to you, it says, as Putin taunts the West with terrifying military displays, Westminster convulsed over whether the PM's birthday broke COVID rules. Now, astonishingly, the Mets launch an investigation that may take months. And then the headline there is, a nation that's lost all sense of proportion. What's your view on this? I have to say, I am inclined to agree with this. I think we've got to a stage right now where, just bear with me for a second. We've got to a stage right now where information presented in the media, unless it's shocking, and when I say media, I'm talking about social media, just generally across the board, unless it has a really diverse polarity to it. In other words, it's polar opposites. It's creating this conflict. People just, somebody trying to get through to me here. People just don't seem to engage with it. So it does seem crazy that whilst globally there's a lot of issues happening at the moment, I'm sure you're aware of this, the whole situation with Russia, etc., and the sensitivity of that and the threats that are sitting in the background, which, by the way, to some extent has been masked by what's going on, by what's been going on in terms of COVID and all of the fear that people have on a daily basis. And this is the challenge we've got. And my personal view on it is this, that people are literally surviving day to day on what they see in front of them. They have to pay their bills. They have to get their kids to school. They have to pay their mortgages. They're not sure if they're going to get their job in a month's time, 2 months' time. They're hearing the news of inflation. They're hearing the news on interest rates possibly going up. They're hearing the possibility of an increase in redundancies, which is most likely, and a property crash. All that stuff's happening right on our doorstep. Plus this whole question about, should we be vaccinated again? Should we have masks on and masks off? People are so polarized at the moment in their views. There is no single in the middle conversation where two people can go, that's a great observation you've made. And I think that's a fair point. I guess from my perspective, this is how I feel. None of that fucking happens anymore. If somebody has another view, it's completely polarized. And people then start, their egos kick in. There's this head-to-head buffeting that goes on, and it creates a real clash. And then amidst all that, in the background, you've got activities like, what's happening with the situation with Russia, the threat of nuclear war, etc. And, the suggestions that that's imminent. And then we've got huge amounts of resources going into investigating what's happening with the possibility that birthday contravened the issue over COVID and, masks and all that sort of stuff, social distancing. It becomes disproportionate. And as a nation, we get numb to it. And that's the challenge that I have. And this is my personal view at the moment. I'd be interested to see your views on this. But my personal concern is that the extremity of the news has got to a point now where, unless it's really extreme, we kind of filter it and we go numb to it. And I still remember something similar happening way back in the 80s. Those of you that are old enough, you remember this, when we had Live Aid, and there was a lot of footage in those days of places in Africa, Cambodia, where you saw people starving, and the images were really graphic. I mean, we're talking about children who were completely malnutrition, babies dying, mums holding their children. Literally, they were bones, skin and bones. And it was so graphically shocking. And so for a period of time, I think all of us in this country, particularly, obviously I can speak from the UK here, were like, what can we do? And I remember I was in my late teens, early 20s, and it was like, put some money towards this, do something, do a fundraiser or whatever. And I still remember that period. Then what happened, I noticed, is that those images continued and continued, but as a nation, we kind of got used to it. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying the complacency that sets in, because when you see something enough times, it's called satiation. It's like couples getting into a relationship. There's this incredible connection to start with, bang, and there's love, intimacy, and they do all these things, and every little thing is like excitement. And then after a while, we get used to that person. Our children, after a while, as they get a little bit older, some of the novelty factors, the little things they used to do before, they're not such a novelty anymore. So it's natural part of being a human being that we get satiated, we get familiar with, excuse me, my focus has gone completely there. We get familiar with something that's happening around us if we see it enough. That's what's been happening for the last couple of years. And now the media, the news has to be so extreme that it polarizes people into these diverse conversations. And so it causes a conflict, it causes clash. People can't even meet in the middle anymore and be kind to each other. There has to be kind of an edge to it. And that's coming into families, get-togethers, WhatsApp groups, etc. And then we see this comment, which I think is a fair comment. You know, have we lost our sense of proportion? I think we have. So it's kind of a rant, but it's also an observation. If you said to me, well, what's a takeaway from this, Dr. Rowe? I would ask you today maybe to be aware of that in any conversations you have with somebody. And if you have a strong view, which I'm sure you have, about what's going on in the world at the moment, just take a moment to see that view from that person's perspective, and even to the point where maybe a set of circumstances have driven them to that belief. And that's where, you know, I think if you can take that perspective and have a sovereign state of mind and just float, remove yourself, and as the great Deepak Chopra says, be a silent witness to that moment, I think you'll find that you may have a different perspective, or at least handle that situation differently. And on that note, I've got to go, because the person that was contacting me, I'm about to do a video with him. All right, so I'll see you all soon. Dr. Rowe, signing out.